This full moon in Taurus is going to be giving us a sneak peek into what it is that we are being prepared for in the long run. In a moment, I'm going to be unpacking for us through astrology and get some additional insight using the tarot as to why it would be advisable for those of us who are on the extremes of this very dualistic outcome of the presidential election, which was destined to be dualistic no matter which way it went. There was always going to be folks who are going to be mourning and those who are going to be celebrating. So I'm going to be giving us some very valid reasons, looking at the energetic patterns, as to why those of us who are mourning and scared have reason for hope. And likewise, I'm going to be giving reasons for those of us who might be celebrating, why it would be advisable to stay humble and aware. And then in bringing those extremes together, perhaps all of us can come to a place of being cautiously optimistic, informed, but not inundated, aware, and not lazily going back to sleep and going back on autopilot just because there might be a brief reprieve of an election that may have gone your way. There's some big things in store for the next decade, but this full moon is giving us a sneak peek as to what the bigger picture of all of this is. It's so easy to get lost into the minutia of all of the pundits and the social media dialogue and na. I'm going to invite us to just pause and take a look at where we're at truly right here, right now, with this full moon in Taurus. I have a lot to say, so let's get started. All right, so full moon in Taurus is at 24 degrees and it's conjunct Uranus at 25 degrees, also in Taurus, of course. And then both of these are trine Pluto at 29 degrees in Capricorn. So what does all of that mean? I think I'm just going to bring this up because it's going to automatically come up as I explain this. There's also a sextile with Neptune at 27 degrees in Pisces. So what's very interesting is that you have the full moon that's in Taurus, and that's an earth element. It's about stability. It's associated with Venus. It's about wealth, and it's about home. It's about our material resources. And then, of course, with every full moon, the moon is opposing the sun, and the sun is in Scorpio at 24 degrees. And Scorpio is a very deep water sign. It's about the subconscious. It's about transformation. And it's also associated, it's ruled by the planet of Pluto, which the moon is trining in Capricorn. And Capricorn is also an earth element. Capricorn, it is somewhat about material wealth, and resources just because it's associated with earth, but it's more about like systems, organizations, institutions, and how we organize ourselves in order to overcome challenges. It's associated with the sea goat. So the sea goat can go to high highs and low lows. It is a sign that can overcome huge, big challenges. And Pluto is in Capricorn. So we have the full moon in Taurus, which is conjunct Uranus. Uranus is about transformation. It's about spontaneous and unexpected transformation. It's about also new perspectives. It's associated with Aquarius. So it's about new perspectives as far as the group, the community, how we reorganize ourselves socially. And then we have those energies. We have Taurus, which is the material wealth. You have, which is basically, it's hand in hand. It's dancing with this planet that comes in with spontaneous change. And then you have this harmonious aspect with the planet of death and rebirth, Pluto in Capricorn. So what all of this is doing is it's also being softened with this sextile of Neptune in Pisces, and Neptune rules Pisces. It's very, very happy there. So for the last year and a half, with the North and South Node being in the Aries and Libra, we have been consistently over and over, both on a collective and on a personal level. This has come up in some way, shape, or form with nearly every single client that I've worked with, that there is in some way this reassessment or challenges that are coming up where we're having to re-navigate what it means to be a sovereign self and what it means to be part of a community. How can the community serve the individual? How can, instead of this individual having to overly compromise themselves in order to appease the community, to appease the group? So the North and South Node has been working on our sense of what sovereignty, independence, and freedom means for the last year and a half. And it's going to be changing into Pisces and Virgo on November 11th. So this is important because I'm going to get back to like how the full moon ties into this. So this full moon in Taurus, and Uranus hasn't been in Taurus for a minute. It doesn't move all that fast. And so when we have this conjunction between our subconscious in Taurus, and then it's in opposition with with the sun, which is in a sign that rules the subconscious, and it also rules transformation. And then there's this trine with the planet of transformation. What we're being asked to do is we're being asked to transform our relationship between our inner world and our outer world. And when Pluto and Uranus, when they bring in transformation, it's going to be messy. And in part because the ego does not want to change. Most of us create, even unknowingly, most of our opinions are created around our group affiliation and what information, what relationships, what affiliations support our identity. We like to think that our opinions are always logical, but more often than not, we typically will use logic in order to support our identity and our group affiliations. And with Uranus in play and Pluto, we're going to be asked to really, really assess that. And this very much ties in to this huge lesson that all of us have been feeling in one way, shape, or form with the North and South Node, that where the North Node has been in Aries, and that's what we're being invited to move towards, and the South Node being in Libra, which is the lessons that we've already learned and the energy that we're moving away from. So we're moving towards more individualism. We are being invited to move towards more independence. And that's not to say that being independent is somehow better than being a community or a team player. That's not necessarily what it's saying. It's saying that in one way, shape, or form, we have already experienced the team player. We've already experienced the community piece, and that now we need to move into a way of being that is more sovereign, that is more focused on what it is that we need, not from a selfish place, but from a sacred self place. And this is really important because this is the last full moon that's going to happen before Pluto moves into Aquarius on November 19th, where it will stay it's going to stay in Aquarius until 2043. I believe that's right. I wrote it down somewhere. Yes, until 2043. So this is another way that we're being supported. One of the shadows of Aquarius, and Pluto moving into Aquarius, is going to dig up all of the shadowy stuff of that sign. It's moved out of Capricorn. When Pluto went into Capricorn, that was when we had the financial crisis. We started seeing the corruption and the manipulation in the financial sector. And Capricorn is an earth element. It's about systems. It's about institutions. There has been all kinds of upheaval where we are seeing like all of the icky that needed to be dug up, what needs to be composted essentially, so that we can clear out our systems. Everything from Hollywood to the banking to healthcare, all of our systems and institutions since Pluto's been Capricorn have come under scrutiny in the last 14 years. And now it's going into Aquarius. Now, the shadow side of Aquarius is mass psychosis, it's groupthink, it's being led by the nose, so to speak. It's dogmatic kind of thinking, and it's also about like over-sacrificing the individual for the greater good. That is one of the dark sides of Aquarius. So with the two nodes that have been teaching us how to be more sovereign, that have been teaching us how important your sacred self truly is, and that it's okay to ask for the support of the group to support the individual versus the individual always having to be a martyr and to appease the community, whether or not that's our individual personal families, our blood families, or it's our friends, or it's our coworkers, or it's our political affiliations, whatever it might be. And over the last year and a half, we have really been put through the gauntlet over and over again. If you take a look at the astrology and tarot readings that I've done for the last year and a half, this theme has come up in a variety of different ways over and over again, is the me versus we. And we are now coming into the final chapter of that, because the North and South Node are going to move into Pisces and Virgo, where the North Node is going to be in Pisces and the South Node is going to be in Virgo on January 11th. So if we had not been put through this gauntlet of understanding, our boundaries and how to communicate our boundaries and to unpack codependency, enabling behaviors, ways in which we just kind of go with the flow that may not be so flowy, that may just be more like martyrdom or hiding. If we had not been faced with those, then collectively we would be more predisposed to the shadowy sides of Aquarius, which could be very, very detrimental. I'm seeing this as almost like the universe is creating a safeguard to help us not fall into that trap. So that Pluto, when it gets into Aquarius, is going to be able to excavate that part of our collective psyche, the parts of ourselves that, ways in which technology, because Aquarius rules over technology. So ways in which technology is being used to control and to manipulate versus for the greater good. I think that's going to be something that's going to come up. AI is going to explode once Pluto goes into Aquarius, and we are absolutely going to have this kind of scrutiny in order to be able to keep that kind of powerful technology in check. So, and it rules over group affiliation. Social justice is going to have an upheaval, and eventually what this is gearing us up for, it's evolution. Evolution is also somewhat messy. We kind of, when we look at it through textbooks, it can look like really linear, but it's really not. It's more like this, and that is what this process is. This process is going to feel very tense. And also the thing too that I want to bring up is that the moon being in Taurus and the sun being in Scorpio, these two signs, even though they're very opposite in terms of elements, Scorpio's water and Taurus is earth, these two signs like to hold on really tight. And they can almost be dogmatic with how tight they want to hold on. It's very difficult for these energies to let go. And with Uranus in play, with the trine in Pluto, it is asking us to soften our grip on the reins. And Neptune is bringing in this very spiritual energy and is inviting us to imagine other possibilities. Pisces is opening up our mind a bit. Pisces and Neptune is in Pisces, so and that's the one that's sextiling all this. And it is more about less defined themes. It's more about the potential, astral travel, spiritual connection. And I think, and then so the North and South Node are also going to be shifting, where the North Node is going to come into Pisces, and the North Node is what we're being invited to step into. So this is paving the way for these very large shifts that are going to be happening between now and through January. I mean, really, the shifts are going to continue really through 2030, because we are really in a very, like almost like a pressure cooker of transformation. But it's okay, because these kinds of times, although they can provoke a lot of anxiety, because human beings, we don't typically like change. We know it's necessary. We have enough wisdom and awareness to, kind of like, very begrudgingly go through it, because honestly, like, there are a lot of times those kind of big changes, like we have some influence over it, but we can't control it. So be the canoe driver. I think this came up in our last video. Like, you can't control the flow of the river, but you can direct your boat. So the thing to really anchor into is, with things being as they are in your particular situation in life and wherever it is that you're finding yourself, whether or not you're really happy and comfortable or you're going through challenges, ask yourself this question: with things being as they are, what is the most healthiest decision I can make for myself? Typically, the most healthiest decision you can make for yourself ends up, even if it doesn't seem like it at first, ends up being what is ultimately beneficial for the greater good. So this whole, and then there's also this square between Mercury and Jupiter that are in opposition, and both of these square Saturn, also at 12 degrees Pisces. So this is a very spiritual moon. There's all kinds of like spiritual evolution, and spiritual evolution typically makes us feel very anxiety provoking, because spiritual evolution is going to require us to take a look at our identity. It's going to require us to give our ego a little bit of a revamp. We may change who we think we are in the next 6 months. We may change vocation. We may change how we work, even if our job stays the same. We may reprioritize our life. We may have different relationships. We may reprioritize those relationships. So there is going to be like big upheavals as far as like our own personality and how we express ourselves over the next, it could even happen in the next like couple weeks. And then and so all of this is going to leave us like feeling very shaky. But like I said, if you don't get anything from this video, hear this. Don't be afraid. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Evolution has been happening for billions of years, and it's going to continue for billions of years more. You and I are honored to be a part of it, and it's going to be okay. And this is definitely an evolutionary leap that we are experiencing right now. And we might start feeling, it's like the leap, I'm like visualizing like being in a jet fighter, right? And it moves really fast, and you start feeling those G-forces, and those G-forces can like make you feel sick. Doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong. It just means that the environment is super intense. So I hope that's a visual that really helps. Like, the intensity doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong. So let's get out of the fight and flight. Let's focus in on what it is that we can do to influence our own lives. Stay informed, but don't get inundated. If you start getting triggered by what you're seeing in the media and what's around you, if you're being triggered, then you're no longer being informed. You're then now have dropped out of your prefrontal cortex, where you're able to logically analyze, logically reason, and now you're going into more of the primal part of the brain that isn't really able or really designed for that kind of processing. If you start getting triggered, take a break. So let's get back to this Mercury and Jupiter in opposition, because this is also very interesting. Because Mercury is at 16 degrees in Sagittarius and Jupiter is at 19 degrees in Gemini. These two planets are like in each other's house. So what's really interesting, because Mercury is associated with Gemini and Jupiter's in Gemini. And Mercury and Jupiter is associated with Sagittarius, and Mercury's in Sagittarius. So you see that they're in each other's house, right? Like it's like they decided to go on vacation to each other's house, and they know that the other is in the other one's house. But then there is like this square with Saturn that's at 12 degrees Pisces. It's like these two have decided, instead of a house, let's give another analogy. It's a school. They wanted to get the other one's perspective. And Saturn is about karma. Saturn's about limitation. So this kind of alignment isn't really necessarily comfortable, because Saturn, it limits, and it kind of, to me, it always feels like it kind of squeezes. So there is this taking stock, there's this inspiration to learn a new perspective simply because the environment is pressurized. And again, it's a spiritual kind of evolution because Pisces is involved. Saturn's in Pisces. And so this really reminds me of a rune. Back a long time ago, I used to also do rune readings on here, and there's a rune called Nauthiz, and it kind of looks like a lopsided X, and it's known as the need fire, and it means like the two sticks that are rubbed together that then create the fire. And that rune typically comes up in a reading when there is tension or challenge in one's life that has a purpose, that really is there for growth, it's there for evolution, and eventually once a person creates this alchemical process where they take that challenge and uses it to their advantage, or navigates through it instead of resists it and dig their heels in and say, no, I'm not going to do this. Once they navigate through that, they're typically are better off than they were before. So it's challenge with a purpose. And that is what this looks like to me. Mercury and Jupiter in opposition, in each other's houses, in each other's signs. And then we have both of these squaring Saturn at 12 degrees Pisces. It's learning, it's taking stock, and it's spiritual connection that is inspired by tension. So with all that being said, let's take a look and let's see if there is some additional information that we can glean using the tarot. So we got kind of a macro view, literally a bird's eye view on what's going on in the astrology. Let's take a look a little bit more finite. How can we best leverage this full moon in Taurus on November 15th? Okay, all right. Had a few cards that just kind of popped out of the deck, so that's always interesting. I always look at those as like being like, hello, me. I had something to say. All right, so these three cards came out of the deck together. They're the ones that popped out. Okay, so these three cards that popped out together is we have the Death card reversed, and this definitely speaks to that energy that we were talking about before, where we were talking about like the invitation is to let go, the invitation is to hold our opinions lightly, the invitation is to start trying to take a pragmatic point of view, to maybe take a look at things from another person's point of view, even if we don't agree. That's definitely that, because the Death card reversed is about a resistance to let something go. And then we have the Six of Pentacles, which is very interesting because I would consider this to be very Aquarian kind of energy. Six of Pentacles is about like the generosity within a group. It's about, and it is about group affiliations. It's also about support from the community. And then we have the Sun. And I mean, the Sun is one of the best cards in the deck. So if we can just let go of who we think our community is and who we think is our support, and start taking more of like a curious perspective. How am I really being supported? How might I really learn and grow? We will reach success. The Sun card's about success. It's about abundance. It's about nurturing. Now, with this journey, we got some additional information. Temperance card comes up reversed, and this really isn't much of a surprise. So I look at the Temperance card as the card of like spiritual alchemy, because it isn't just about balancing emotions. You know, you have this angel. It said that it represents Gabriel, and it is like holding these two water cups. But you see that the water cups are being mixed together. So it's taking polar opposites and creating something new, which I think that we're in the process of. I think that that is going to be part of our evolution long term, is starting to come up with less of a dualistic perspective where everything is either right or wrong, good or bad. You know, that's actually a trauma response to have such an extreme perspective. And what this is telling us is that when it's reversed is that we're kind of struggling. We're probably struggling because of this. Probably struggling because, you know, we don't want to let go. And when we let go, what's coming to me around that is that it starts to empty some of this cups that she's holding, because because we've let go. So we have to maybe pour out some of what was in our cup to start creating something new. And this is going to require, so when the Eight of Pentacles, when it's reversed, it's about acquiring habits, skill sets, and, you know, other types of mastery that are more internal, more personal. When it's right set up, it's more about like perhaps a hobby or a career or something that's more like a more tangible or external kind of skill set. But when it's reversed, it's more about like an internal skill set, an internal mastery. So we're being invited to go in. We're being invited to ask ourselves what will give us more peace, both internally as well as in how we interact with one another. This kind of division that we've been experiencing for oh so long in different ways, shapes, and forms, it's part of old paradigm, and it's time for it to go. And so let this election be the last siren call of that division, of that kind of duality, of everything has to be either all this way or all that way. Let's get out of the trauma response of having to separate everything and start seeing if there's ways in which we can create some alchemy within our own lives as well as within the collective to have true inclusivity, which is less about dividing, segregating into labels, and is more about asking questions and treating individuals as individuals. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining me here, and I look forward to seeing you back here in a couple weeks. I am going to be launching some exciting new content over the next week. Please join me for that, because we're going to be exploring like intuition, what different types of intuition, how to develop your intuition, as well as some things that can get in the way of trusting ourselves and our intuitive gifts and what to do about that. So I look forward to it, and I will see you back here soon. If you're looking for an individual session, if there is some calamity, chaos, challenges that you would like to have some outside perspective on, go ahead and join and click the link below and book a session with me. I work both virtually as well as in person in Tempe, Arizona. I love you all, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.